the opening balance of inventory. Can we, or would it be correct to then use the analytical procedure in terms of comparing the opening balances of inventory for the past 2 years or 5 years, or doing some sort of a ratio that will give you your inventory levels? And then from that result, you devise a scenario, for instance, saying that if inventory is much lower this year, inquire with management regards to certain documentation, if you are following me. So can our one procedure that we do result, and you basically provide the result in your answer, lead you to giving an additional procedure? I don't know if I'm articulating myself correctly.
You are. And actually you are supporting something that I think I mentioned a bit too quickly earlier. Analytical procedures for me personally is, although it is a procedure on its own, although it's listed as a procedure on its own, by inspecting something, for instance, you can already gain proof that something is not right. But analytical procedures in itself doesn't necessarily tell you that something isn't right. It does give rise to a follow-up audit procedure. You need 100%. To inquire, you need to then go inspect, you need to then observe, but it points you in the right direction of what to ask. And analytical procedures are usually used when you look at ratios, as you've already mentioned, and when you look at large quantity of information. So when you do all your general expenses, your sales, you will look at stuff like that, and it's always more preferable to make some kind of a ratio, because then you make it relative, and then compare that ratio over, say, 5 years, for instance, to see, is there a trend? Sometimes that analytical procedure just shows that it's a highly volatile condition, and that it does change every year a lot. So then it actually proves nothing. So analytical procedures can point you in the right direction, but it is not conclusive in its own. I hope I answered your question.
That answers my question. Thanks.
Thanks. Then reperformance. Easy thing that I can, or procedure that I can think of reperformance is attending a stock count, where they've already done the stock count. You obtain the stock count sheets from the warehouse manager, and you go to selected bins, for instance, and you count the inventory or whatever in those bins. So very important to also understand what procedures can you use when you use these keywords. What procedures, what is the more practical procedure? So like I've explained with inspection and with observation, reperformance is, for instance, redoing a stock count. If you are attending a stock count, then you are observing. But if you want to see, and then your focus is more on stock. But if you are reperforming a bank reconciliation or reperforming a stock count, actually testing that management's procedures are adequate and effective, and that you can rely on it. So there's a difference between what your reason is for using these terms, or these verbs, if that makes sense. Then be on the lookout. So those are the verbs. Then be on the lookout for documents. Documents and statements. I should actually not list these two things together. With statements, I don't mean bank statements. I mean statements made by management, statements made by the previous auditor, statements made by the previous accountant or current accountant. So be on the lookout for things like there were stringent deadlines, there were they didn't think something is important, and when you did your materiality test, your preliminary, your planning materiality, you actually saw that that area that they said they didn't pay too much attention on is actually very material. So that already increases the risk that something might have gone wrong there. The control risk might be very high because management's controls might not have picked something up that you actually rate as very material. So be on the lookout for statements, documents. Always make sure that you pay attention to invoices. Inventory count sheets I've mentioned. Reconciliations and journals. Guys, journals, very important. When you go into practice and you see that management, especially senior management, has posted journals, any auditor will immediately zoom in on that, because there's no easier way than to manipulate financial statements than with a simple general journal. So we need to make sure that we get a full explanation of why that journal was, those journals were posted. So there needs to be reasons, accounting, and business logic. So examine that. Inquire from management, and then you evaluate what management has given you. Does it make business sense? Is it correct according to accounting standards? Why was that journal passed? And then obviously each month all the accountants prepare management reports. Those management reports share a lot of information about all the various accounts, various companies, various departments, etc. And it includes a lot of audit evidence. So this is usually a very confidential pack of documents, and it will probably only be given to the more senior auditors, and then they will filter the relevant information down to the interns or the more junior auditors. Minutes of meetings, so minutes. Were they done? Should they have done? And what is the content thereof? So if the Companies Act requires that there must be regular meetings between directors of whatever committee, there must be there must be minutes of those meetings, because those minutes are proof that the meeting actually occurred. And it will mention the items that was discussed and what was the conclusions reached, further audit evidence. Then we get to our favorite topics, assertions. So assertions, we have probably the main one is at account balance level. Okay, what do we test there? We test for existence. How will we test for existence? Let's say, for instance, we talk about inventory. What is a test to prove that inventory exists?
Stock take.
Say again.
Invoice purchases. Stock take and invoices.
I can't hear your first one. What is the first one you mentioned?
Stock take and invoices.
Okay.
Purchases.
I'm glad you mentioned stock take. let's say a stock count. How will you perform your stock count? We are talking about existence. What will your audit procedure be to verify existence?
I have two, Charles.
Okay.
You can either reperform
Yeah.
stock count or
Yes.
observe the stock count at year end.
So reperform, or you can observe. Very importantly, what would your direction be? I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, I'll explain and then you guys will see what I mean. So let me continue. Direction. You will obtain the stock sheets, okay? Because that's what I said. Well, one of the documents that I mentioned here was inventory counts sheets. So you will know what is in the system. What are we comparing? We are comparing the system, or let's put it better. We are comparing the theoretical inventory versus now comes the important part. If you test from the system to the floor, what does it look like? I'm spelling floor wrong there. If I test from the system to the floor, what am I testing? What assertion am I satisfying?
There's a few there, Charles, I would say. What
Yeah, I would
key
say
comes to
maybe
mind?
existence.
I don't know who went first. Yes. Kurt, did you want to
can
say
go,
something
Audrey?
more?
No, Audrey can answer.
Oh, yeah, I was just
Audrey?
saying my first thought was existence, to make sure it actually is on the floor.
Exactly. If I look at so let's say a stock count that I did before we used to audit EDCAS or the EDCON group. So if you select an item on the stock count and say it's a pair of Levi jeans with a specific stock code, so they say it's there, so it means they say it's on the system. So I will go and check if it really exists. So then I check for existence. Does that make sense? When I test from the floor to the system, then I'm checking if my system is complete. So you see there's two ways that you can look at stock counts. The procedure will be to reperform and to observe, but it can be used for both existence and completeness. You guys can unmute at any point if you want to discuss anything.
For me, Charles,
Yes.
on stock count and reperformance of it as an audit procedure to verify existence. Thinking about it very realistically, the amount of inventory that a company will have as a balance, say at year end, could be of such a nature to reperform it will take a lot of time if you want to reperform to verify system to floor. So would you do a sample of specific inventory items that is included in your balance and then go and check if it's actually on the floor to satisfy the existence assertion?
Definitely, you will never be able to do a full stock count. For instance, if I have to refer to Edgar's, I mean, Edcon, back when I was part of that audit team, Edcon at that stage consisted of still the Discom stores, the CNAs, the Edgar's, Jets, Legits, all those stores. And they all have to do stock counts. So it's impossible for any audit team or for any auditor to verify all those stock counts, to reperform them or observe them. So your audit procedures will always be, or mostly be, on a sample basis. And I'm putting that in a question mark with a question mark because sometimes it's not necessary to do a sample basis. For instance, if you are a earthworks company and you have 10 back actors or whatever you call these big machines, trucks, let's just stick with trucks, and you have 10 3 million rand or 5 million rand trucks, it's easy to go verify all of them. You don't have to do a sample basis. So it is always very important to determine when do you need to sample and when not to, because sometimes your population can be so big that it's actually also not going to add any value to do a sample, because your sample will never be representative of the full population. And then you have to do analytical procedures. So if your sample is such that you can pull, if your population is such that you can pull a sample that can be representative of that population, then you can do a sample and you can execute your substantive audit procedures on that sample. But you have to, and that's why sampling is also a very nice topic on its own to pull apart. It's something that you really need to consider. But in this case, definitely, to answer your question, Kurt, I will definitely say this is on a sample basis.
Thanks, Charles.
But you have to evaluate the situation. Maybe you can do all of them. I used to be on one of the audits that I was on. It was a Unitrans audit where we went to specific dealerships and we did this exact stock count procedure. There we did 100%. We checked all the vehicles, all new vehicles, all used vehicles, vehicles in the workshop, because you could. It was physically possible to do 100% confirmation, and then you can do it. And then you will do you will do that exact same thing. You will do from the system to the floor and from the floor to the system to make sure that your system is complete and that everything in your system does exist.
I hear you. Thanks, Charles. I think
Thanks.
sampling is also dependent on a lot of planning activities for nature of entity, risk assessment procedures, and materiality will determine the size of the sample, or if you would sample as a basis in terms of your audit procedures. Thanks, Charles. I got it.
Thanks, Kurt. No, definitely you have to determine when you do sampling, those three things are always very relevant. Based on your materiality, based on the risk assessment, you need to determine whether you are going to do a full check. So if a full check is possible, you can do it. If a full check is not possible, then obviously that will lead the auditors into consider other more relevant audit procedures. And then obviously it is still the auditor's right to withhold an opinion. So if there's a massive population that we are now finding to be very susceptible to fraud, and we cannot test enough items to give reasonable assurance, then we must say that. We must abstain from giving a opinion at all. So sampling is very important, whether we want to use a sample, do 100% sample, or whether that sample will in any way be representative of the full population. Then we move on to valuation as one of the assertions. Did we use the correct evaluation techniques? And there we rely a lot on the accounting statements, property, plant and equipment, the new IFRS 16 for leases, where operating leases are gone. Did we value our assets, or did we value our inventory at the right level? Let's stick with inventory, since it's topical. What does IAS 2 say about inventory? It must be shown at the lower of cost or net realizable value. We don't necessarily have to execute that procedure, but we need to see, did management do it? And if we are happy with the way management did it, then we can rely on their work because we have reperformed their calculation, or we've observed their calculation, or we've inspected their calculation. We can observe how they do it. We can inspect if they've done it. And then obviously we can also, if possible, reperform. And then obviously analytical procedures. We compare what the reasonable inventory levels of a similar company in the same type of industry will be. So it's easy to have those procedures as well. So always remember that one as well, something that you need to maybe note down, is compare the company to similar companies, similar in size and similar in industry, because that can also be indicative of anything that might be problematic within the audit or the accounting records. So valuation, was the correct accounting standard applied, and was that standard applied correctly? IAS 2, ISA 16, property, plant and equipment, and then the new leases standard. And then that's just to mention a few. Then we have rights and obligations. And then very important one that links to ISA 1 is presentation and disclosure. Okay, so very important, understand your assertions at account balances level. Then we have assertions, so that was number 1. Number 2 is at transaction, classes of transaction. There we will test also for completeness. Did we process all the invoices? Occurrence. Did that specific transaction actually happen? And did it happen in the correct financial period, which talks to my cutoff assertion? Did I classify it correctly? We just spoke about leases. Operating leases are no longer, you can no longer select operate or There used to be the difference between a finance lease and an operating lease, where a finance lease was capitalized and an operating lease was just put through the income statement as an expense or an income, depending on whether you're the lessee or the lessor. Now that's gone. We have to show everything in the balance sheet. Doesn't matter which one it is, and there's a value involved, but whatever, classify. Did I classify it correctly? IAS 16, if the information should be about the purchasing of a new piece of equipment and we incurred additional cost in its assembly, in training the staff, did we capitalize correctly, or did we expense correctly? Was the treatment correctly? Did we classify that transaction correctly? Then obviously accuracy. And then the final one, also presentation and disclosure. Anything that you guys would like to discuss on this point? Okay. Sorry guys, just give me a moment. Okay, so sticking with substantive procedures, I want to move over to CATS a bit. We don't have lots of time left, so we will probably continue with that in our next session. So what is very important with CATS is that it actually speaks to everything we've just discussed. Because what is CATS? It's computer assisted audit techniques. To do what? To execute these verbs. We are employing computer-assisted audit techniques to inspect, to observe, to inquire. Well, not inquire, but it will help us to get the information to inquire about. It will help us recalculate. It will get us the information to perform analytical procedures on. So it is a assisting factor to help us execute audit procedures. So you guys are happy with what I just said there? Computer audit assisted techniques are almost evident in all big auditing exercises. We're working with massive amounts of data, and you have to employ these computer assisted audit techniques to extract the information that you need. And some of these techniques that are being used by your bigger auditing firms, you can't imagine what those things can do. That you literally run it on the client system and it picks up trends, analysis, it pulls samples, it identifies correct population, it determines whether are complete. You can do completeness tests, whether your population that you selected, that the first item is really supposed to be the first item and the last item is the last item, cutoff procedures. So as computer assisted audit techniques is exactly what the word says. It assists the current audit procedures. Kurt, I saw you unmuting your mic. Did you have a question there?
No. Nothing from my side.
Oh, okay, 100%. So I think to more effectively deal with computer-assisted audit techniques, we will do a question. Like I said, I have been speaking to the lecturers today, and it sounds very positive that they will send me some of the answers, and then we can actually take graded questions and we can do computer-assisted audit techniques example. But just so you know where it fits in, it computer-assisted audit techniques fits in at the beginning of a proper substantive audit procedure, especially when you have a high risk and a high risk account that is big in volume, data, etc. So it's always important to know it is part of the beginning of a substantive procedure. Okay, and you always identify where you will use it in your planning. Any questions there? Okay. I want to focus a bit, just to finalize, on analytical procedures. I know we've unpacked a bit, but let's pause a bit at analytical procedures. Because it's something that, if you look at some of the lecturers' notes, that we forget to apply. And if we apply, we don't apply it in the correct way. So analytical procedures can include anything from, let's say, comparisons. What do we want to compare? Let's say comparisons of financial information, prior periods, anticipated results of the entity, such as budgets and forecasts. So let's say budgets and forecasts. And then remember the thing I mentioned earlier, compare, not the right compare again, similar companies, or let's say
the same industry, Charles.
Yeah, let's say similar industry. Thanks, Kurt. That's the word I'm looking for.
Last night I was going through accounting estimates, and one of the specific things that they mentioned is that we should do ratio analysis on, or we should look at how accounting estimates are applied as part of an analytical procedure when we do audit accounting estimates.
100%, definitely. Because you are dealing with estimates, the very first thing, if I can think about an estimate, let's think depreciation. If you are, I don't know why I use examples I know absolutely nothing about, but let's say earthworks again, and we are again dealing with a back actor, and the way the company that we are auditing depreciates that asset should, I would expect, it's a general expectation that it should be similar than other companies in the same industry using the same type of asset. And that is an analytical procedure. Because an analytical procedure doesn't have a set form. You analyze. And when you can analyze various information in various ways. So yes, ratios. Ratios, let's say the gross profit. know what I want to write there. Profit percentage. Let's say average cost to company of employees. If your average cost to company has suddenly increased, yet your number of employees have stayed the same, you might be experiencing ghost employees or fictitious transactions being done and people being paid that doesn't really work at the company. So that is some of the risks that can be highlighted if you perform analytical procedures, specifically looking at ratios, and then something like your average cost to company of employees. Guys, that's all from my side for now. The next session will be questions. I did speak, like I said, I did phone one of the lecturers today. If you guys have got access to graded questions, memos or answers, please forward it to me as well. I would greatly appreciate it. It assists me in my preparation for classes and that I can guide you through a question without giving you the answer. Because that's the worst way that you can study for auditing, is by looking at their answer in trying to memorize what they say. It is your train of thought that must be corrected or put on in a specific. Your mindset must be in a must be in a certain way. Then you will always answer any audit question. You will attempt it in the same way, in a more correct way. But if you look at the answer, you're going to try and memorize a memo, and that might actually lead you to giving answers in the exam that is actually irrelevant. You remember it from a paper and you just write it down, whether it's actually a substantive procedure that is relevant, for instance, to that scenario or not, but you just write it down. So it's a big risk to do that. If you look at the memo after you've done a question, always ask, why didn't you give that specific answer, and let's discuss that. So that I would, in a one-on-one consultation, that is something that I would like to unpack, is why did you not write that answer? And then we can see if we can get a link to what you wrote, because it might not be that you didn't understand the question or that your answer are that wrong. It's just that you didn't say it in the right way. So let's rather find a link between what you wrote and what the answer says without memorizing the answer. Because then you are going to memorize a way of thinking instead of memorizing the answer. Any questions? Guys, that is me for now. Can I ask you guys a favor to please complete the attendance register if you haven't done so already? Please post your student number in the chat section also if you haven't done that already. And then please complete the evaluation form. I would really highly appreciate that. It always gives us an indication of what can we do more, if we have to do more, or if you are happy with the way we are doing things, we would like to know that. Yes, Kurt.
Hi, Charles. Sorry, I'm speaking a lot tonight.
You may
do an analytical procedure of how much I spoke.
I'll compare your participation in the following sessions, and then I can determine whether it went up or down with the rest that you thought you spoke too much, and we can conclude on that. That's my estimation.
My question, Charles, is I don't know if the other students are finding the same kind of problem, but one of the things, it's probably what you are also struggling with, is the lack of specific details on how to answer a question. Specifically on when we have to develop substantive procedures on the 4 cycles that we have, or on our different cycles. So I basically had to come up with my own kind of approach in terms of answering the questions for it to make sense for me. So the approach that I have, and I want to get your take on it, is that I take the question and the scenario, and then I first ask myself, what are the assertions that are applicable to the specific scenario that we have to verify, or based on what they are asking, what assertions are applicable. And then I take each assertion and I develop my substantive procedures as per that assertion. For instance, verifying the balance of inventory at a specific date. So what are the assertions that are applicable to inventory balance? And then I state my answer, substantive procedures to verify the accuracy, or let's say existence of inventory balance at this date. And that is basically the only thing that is making sense to me. And I don't know if that is the correct way to do it.
Kurt, I don't want to give a mold for an answer. I like the way you are approaching it. It is nothing, there's nothing wrong with that. What I would suggest, and it talks to what you just said, is and I emphasize what I'm saying, it's a suggestion. What we did tonight, we looked at the more important verbs. Okay, so on the one side, we have verbs. What words to use. So your answer, whatever answer you give, must have those type of words in it. So if you formulate, no, that word sounds very wrong at this, but if you develop, let's stick with that word. If you develop your own procedures, make sure that they include those words, because then the examiner will know, what word to use. Then secondly, what would you perform those verbs on? What type of documents or statements? And then we get to assertion. So I've actually given what I wanted to say now in reverse. So yes, you will read the question, determine what the required section says. And then you first say what assertion is applicable. So you will determine whether I'm answering at account balance level, or whether I'm answering at transaction level, classes of transaction level. It can be both. Okay. So having identified that, you now take, for instance, existence, and now you go to I would say the document first. You will see what type of information is given in the question, and you will apply these. I know we say it's verbs, but for me, these are already procedures. You will formulate your procedure using these keywords on those assertions. And then I think your chance of addressing most of the items that needs to be addressed is quite good. And then another thing that I always find very applicable when developing your own procedures is you will always audit something. And I know I'm using a bad word there. I'm saying something. You will always audit something that had a start, it had movements, and it had a final answer. Let me explain. So if I say final answer, I'm talking about, say, for instance, we're sticking with inventory tonight, apparently. So let's stick with inventory. So that's the final answer that I saw on the trial balance. Okay. Now I need to see what actions happened during that period on movements and the start. So I will apply audit procedures on opening balances and on movements, if that makes sense. So that I structure my question always in that way, if it is applicable in that given question.
I hear you.
If it was inventory, they were purchases. there was sales, there was stock counts, all those things happened in the movement area. So there's already a lot of procedures I can apply there. When I have my final answer, I can think of cutoff procedures. When I have my start procedure, I apply procedures on opening balances to make sure that my opening balance is the same as the closing balance of the previous year, or that any changes that has been made to that closing balance is accurate. Those changes are accurate and should have happened according to accounting standards. So that will be, I will structure my first part of the answer that I've just given in this way. So then I will apply the assertions, the information given, and the verbs in this structure. And then I think that is a very good catch net, if I can put it like that, to make sure that you have included all the possible answers.
So may I ask a favor, Charles?
Yes.
I apologize to the other students in the session, but
No,
can you do a question using how you explained it now, maybe in the next class, where you have to develop your own substantive procedures and
100%.
explain it the way you explained it now, from determining where the start of that specific thing is, and using the movements, and then linking it to the assertions, and then going to your specific instruction or verb words.
100%.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Sorry for keeping everyone. I just wanted clarity on that.
No, I think you're not the only one that had those questions, Kurt, so thanks for asking. Any other questions or discussions that you guys would like me to address or elaborate on? Nothing else, guys?
No, I'm good.
Guys, then I just want to ask a general question. In terms of, I know you guys have completed your assignments now, but I was looking at the tutorial letters, and I just want to, because Kurt, you asked now the question, and there might actually be a section where I can apply that on. Tutorial letter 102. See if I can put that on the screen. Tutorial letter 102 has got question answers in it. Where's the questions?
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Audrey.
I'm glad you're putting that up there. Just the other night, I found that, and I too also wanted to know where's the questions, because I only have the answers, but I don't have the questions, and I couldn't find it anywhere on my UNISA.
Okay, then I had the same problem. Does any of the other students know where those questions are?
I'll go have a look for you, Charles. I'm not specifically sure. I have an idea, but let me first go and verify and inspect my study material to get.
Thanks, Kurt.
Are you talking about, just to repeat again, you're speaking about tutorial letter 102?
Yeah. Because
Okay.
it says...
I have the physical one.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find I'm trying to look for I think I should have the soft copy on my my PC at the moment, because I download. Okay, I have a soft copy on my PC. Okay, I'll just put it in the chat right now. Then everyone can have a copy also.
But you're not putting the answers in. You're putting the actual questions in.
Yes. Are you looking for the answers or the questions? I'm sorry.
The questions.
102. Tutorial letter 102.
Yeah, I have tutorial letter
Yes,
102.
I have. Yes.
But that gives the answers. So I'm looking for the questions.
Looking for the questions. Okay, let me just see.
Like I know question 1, for instance, because I had a look at it. Question 1 is a question out of graded questions. But the required doesn't match the answer.
These the questions, the answers to these questions are in the it's in the book. The book that you have to buy, the extra book, it's in that one.
The study guide.
No. The textbook you have to buy, it's a small little textbook. I don't know if I can take a picture now of the textbook. Because the textbook you have to buy, and there's a mini textbook which has the questions.
Charles,
Just while the print.
Yeah.
if I can try and interrupt there. I think these questions are in the latest graded questions. That was the prescribed graded questions for the year. The one that you have, I'm not sure if it's the latest one.
Okay, no, the problem I'm having here is that it says answers to the questions, and then it says topic 1, and then but then it refers to topic 1 in the study guide.
Yes.
And then it lists them as question 1, question 2, question 3. But when I go to the study guide, there is no when I go to the study guide, where is the study guide now? They don't say which questions. So if I know which questions they are talking about, then I actually have questions that I can prepare, that I can do with you guys.
That's why I'm saying, Charles, I think those questions are in the graded questions, the textbook graded questions, but the latest one, the prescribed one. I'm not sure. I'm making a assumption here because I don't have the latest one. I'm not using the latest one.
Yeah, 100%. I just don't think question 1 is question 1 in that graded questions book.
Okay.
Hi. For some reason, I don't know where I put my graded textbook, but I agree with Kurt. I bought the latest textbook, the latest graded one. It's like a small book, like an A5 size. Because, and also on page 4, it says, keep in mind, it's about from graded questions on Auditing 2020 by Gower and Jackson. So it's based on that book.
Okay, 100%.
Page 4, yes.
I'll have a look and then I'll get back to you guys on that. Because there are some good questions that we can do, and please, guys, don't look at the memos. That's all I can ask for your own sake, because you need to know how to get there instead of looking at the answers. The only time when you can look at it and an audit questions answers is if you've attempted it.
All good. Thanks, Charles.
100%. Guys, are there any other questions?
Nothing from my side.
100%. Does anyone need the WhatsApp number? Okay, I'm not going to post that again because I think I did add everybody in there. Okay, so guys, thanks a lot. Appreciate your participation. Please remember the one-on-one sessions. If you're unsure on how to book those sessions, please send me a WhatsApp. I will give you the process that Unisa emailed, and please follow that process, and we will then arrange a one-on-one session over Zoom. I'm going to stay on for another few minutes. If you guys have got any questions, then we can address that. Otherwise, you guys must have a good evening, and then I will let you know when the next class is, or the next extra class is. This class will still be here next week. The only class I will notify you of if there's an extra class. So thanks for participating, guys, and enjoy your evening.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kurt. You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Charles. Bye.
Thanks, Audrey. Adele, is jy daarso?
Skus Charles, ja ek is.
Yes. Wanneer wil jy met goed met jou?
Lekker, dankie. Net druk. Oef. Ek hoor aan jou kant ook maar, nee.
Geweldig. Dit is nou 14 ure voor die rekenaar.
Ja. Luister maar, ek hoor jy het kontak gemaak met 'n dosent.
Ja, ek het die nommer gebel toe ek met wat sal van het begin met 'n A, so 'n kort van. Sy het geantwoord en sy het gesê sy sal kyk of sy vir my die antwoorde kan stuur. Ek het toe 'n e-mail gestuur, ek het julle ingesiesie.
Okay.
En sy het gesê een van die skrywers is actually een van hulle supervisors.
Ja.
Van die boek, ja. So sy het gesê sy sal eers by hom hoor oor die kopieregte. Maar ja, hopelik kan hulle ons help, want ek meen dit is tog om die studente te help, en ek het vir gesê dit is nie vir die verspreiding van die antwoorde nie, dit is vir die verduideliking daarvan. Ek het dit in die e-mail ook uiteengesit.
Ek het nie met haar kontak gemaak nie, dit was 'n man met wie ek kontak gemaak het, en ek kan nou wraggies nie sy van onthou nie. Maar ek is baie bly dat jy kontak gemaak het, en ek hoop regtig waar hulle gaan vir jou antwoorde gee.
Ag, ek hoop ook so,
dis geantwoord.
Dis tog net om die studente te bevoordeel, so ek hoop regtig hulle doen.
Ja.
Ek dink, sal dit alright wees as ek uit hierdie meeting uitgaan, en dan bel ek jou, of wil jy eers môre bespreek?
Nee, ons kan dit doen, of wil jy dit eerder môreoggend doen?
Laat ek dink kom ons sal môre alright wees met jou.
Ja, ek het môre meetings geskeduleer met 'n paar fasiliteerders om juist dit te doen.
Okay, 100%.
So laat dink jy, gaan dit jou pas? Omdat nou ons weet goed kan verander.
Laat ek net gou my kalender hier oopmaak. Okay, ek het 9 uur 'n meeting.
Yes.
Sal 12 uur te laat wees?
Nee, 12 uur is reg.
Okay, kom ons maak dit vat, dan sal ek sommer ete vat 12 uur en dan kan ons meet 12 uur.
Okay, ek gaan ons sommer boek.
Asseblief, Adele.
Sal ek vir meeting request stuur.
Okay, great.
Okay. Allesins, koop jy, ek sien jy het, ek wou jou nie pla na die tyd met claims nie, maar ons sal later praat oor waar het jy nou uitgemis op geld, dan kyk ons nou maar net, hoe kan ons dit hierdie maand maak?
Ag ja, dis 100% Adele. Ons kan dit altyd weer adresseer.
Yes. Okay, maar moenie stres daaroor nie.
Nee, wat ek nou in elk geval doen vir jou, Adele, soos ek klaar is met elke sessie, gaan ek op my Excel spreadsheet, en ek teken dit daaraan, die begintyd, die eindtyd, soos dit ons bespreek het, en dan kan ek dit net vir jou stuur. So dit werk vir my op hierdie oomblik die beste.
Okay. Dis reg so. As jy net daai spreadsheet byhou, dan is dit goed. Ons moet dit net dan op die ou end vergelyk met my attendance register. So al wat ons doen is, jy gee vir my daai spreadsheet of toegang tot jou spreadsheet. Hierso teen die 28ste van elke maand.
Yes.
Dat ek of ons kan dit ook weekliks doen. Dat jy net vir my toegang gee, dan vergelyk ek ons weeklikse registers met wat jy daar het, want ek dink amper ek het op jou spreadsheet, jou ure wat jy toe nou opgetel het, was met 'n uur uit. Met ander woorde, as jy net die prentjie vat wat op jou claim sheet was, het jy 32 gekry, en as ek net daai prentjie se totale optel, dink ek het ek 33 gekry.
Okay.
Dit is 5 verskil. So iewers in die spreadsheet moet ons net kyk, waar het hy dit gemis?
100%, ons kan dit mooi uiteensit.
Okay, Charles, dan moet jy 'n lekker aand hê.
Baie dankie Adel, waardeer jou moeite.
Dis 'n plesier, wees rustig hoor.
Ja,
Daar's
nee,
niks kan uitsorg nie.
Nou gaan ek rustig, net lekker rustig wees.
Okay. Right, Charles.
Is reg, Adel, baie dankie vir jou moeite en ons gesels dan môre.
Yes.
En lekker aand vir julle ook.
Okay. Bye bye.
Dankie Adel, bye bye.